The domestic economy may have been the most important consideration for South Korean voters as they went to the polls in April, but for a country as globally integrated as Korea, the importance of foreign markets as a source for growth cannot be understated. Among the world's 10 largest economies, Korea is only behind Germany in its export dependence, with exports constituting about 40% of GDP. It was also demand for these goods that helped the Korean economy shrink the least among OECD countries in 2020 after the initial shock of the pandemic. For newly elected Korean President Yoon Seok-yeol, ensuring the competitiveness and resiliency of Korean exports amid new challenges will be of paramount importance. Even before the emergence of COVID-19, Korea was one of the countries that took the most collateral damage from the US-China trade war. The pandemic has not only exacerbated this pressure on Seoul, but added a long list of other issues to address after widespread disruptions have raised questions about the existing structure of global supply chains. One of the core issues for Yoon's trade agenda will be how to manage ties with China, Korea's largest trading partner by far. In 2021, the $162 billion in exports sent to China was more than what was sent to the second and third largest destinations combined. Beyond the costs of possible disruptions as seen during the pandemic, Beijing's willingness to weaponize this interdependence, as demonstrated by the THAAD incident, has laid bare the risks in this relationship. Yoon's predecessor, Jae-in, tried to diversify Korea's partners through initiatives such as the New Southern and New Northern policies. While both have their own successes to point to, they have had a limited impact on Korea's reliance on trade with China. Yoon is more overtly critical of China than Moon was, so it might seem as if he'll be more assertive on this front, but he'll be running into the same major structural challenges. This will particularly hold true for semiconductors. The pandemic has highlighted just how important chips are to the modern economy, and Korea is home to some of the world's largest chip makers. This dependence, however, works both ways. Semiconductors are by far Korea's single most important export category, and China is again by far the largest destination. The matter is further complicated by how the United States is looking to decouple supply chains with China in high-tech industries with national security implications, including semiconductors. Yoon may be emphasizing the importance of strengthening the U.S.-Korea alliance, but alliance issues are now more complex than when his conservative predecessors were in office, as the scope of the relationship has broadened. On semiconductors, Yoon will need to strike a delicate balance between listening to business leaders and promoting job growth at home on the one hand, and cooperating with the Biden administration and their efforts to shore up supply chains, including attracting Korean investment to build plants in the U.S. on the other. More broadly, the U.S. stepping down from its traditional leadership role on trade has raised questions about the future of the global economic order, which Korea is highly reliant on. In the region, instead of returning to the CPTPP, the White House is instead pursuing its own Indo-Pacific economic framework, which is expected to fall short of the needs and wants of many market economies in the region. Japan and others have been able to steward some trade agreements in the U.S.'s stead, but it's not clear how sustainable this will be, particularly as China is looking to take a more involved role in steering regional economic networks. Despite all these challenges that lie ahead for Yoon, there is plenty of room for him to shape Korea's trade trajectory over the next 5 years. Key to this will be Yoon making good on his promises for Korea to take on more responsibilities and leadership roles where possible. Beyond participating in the U.S.'s Indo-Pacific economic framework, Yoon will also need to build momentum from the twilight months of the Moon administration and join the CPTPP to ensure higher standard trade rules. In the same vein, he'll also need to follow through on Korea's bid to join the Digital Economic Partnership Agreement, the world's first digital trade pact. Yoon may additionally seek to play a more active role in multilateral institutions, such as an expanded G7, but could be wary of antagonizing China. With so much potentially at stake, Yoon will need to make the most of a strategic and economic environment in flux, which he can only do by being proactive.